14 goals last night. Or make an impression like this Mets fan. Sun in one hand, home run in the other. Let's go around the horn.
Is it worth it, though?
That is not a home run. That is foul.
Man,
That is it worth
And
it?
has some explaining.
Snag, grab, or stab. Definitely a snag.
Courtney Cronin joins us from Chicago, Illinois. Born and raised Indiana University alum, Chicago Bears reporter for ESPN, formerly covered the Vikings, Warriors, Raiders, 49ers, SEC football. And her ESPN Radio 1000 chops will put our panel and the mute button to the test. Courtney, give us your life story. You've got 7 seconds.
Oh, man, I was going to try to thank everybody, but I'm just going to go around to the places where I've lived, from Indianapolis to Mississippi to the Bay Area to Minneapolis, back to Chicago. Thanks to everyone who helped me get here, and hopefully I won't get muted.
That is your life story, but you know how this show works. Your first mute button. There it is. Let's go around the horn. The first word
Points for being born now.
is drunk. Colorado 8, Edmonton 6. That's how you start a series. Man, this series picks up where Edmonton's last series left off. All the fireworks. The Colorado goal, offsides challenge that was lost by Edmonton, which resulted in a 2-goal swing because the failed challenge is a power play, and Colorado scored on that. And everything that came with this game, but also now Edmonton wonders about goalie Mike Smith maybe, and Colorado fears for goalie Darcy Kemper, who's hurt again. All right, Courtney, first to you right out of the gate. Your number one takeaway from last night's lunacy.
My number one takeaway, Tony, is that no one in the NHL knows what offsides is. I keep thinking back to that Cale Makar goal in the first period, and I thought it was offsides. I'm no expert. Apparently, the officials did not think it was either. But beyond that, I don't pin this loss on Mike Smith. Yes, he gave up 6 goals on 25 shots. Anytime that happens, you are going to get pulled. But he doesn't play well historically in game ones, and neither does this Edmonton team throughout this postseason. I'm not worried about Mike Smith going back in for game 2. He's 0-3 in his career with the Oilers in game 1s, in game 2s. He's 2-0-1. His goals against average drops all the way down to 1.09. I'm confident if you put him back in there. At 40 years old, he's on par to do something that only 2 other goalies have done, with 8 saves in this postseason.
All right, save the rest for the 30 for 30 you're going to do on this game 1. Clinton Yates around the horn to you.
You know, as high scoring as it was, this wasn't like the Battle of Alberta fire wagon hockey situation. The second period started 3-2 and ended 7-4. This was a sloppy skate overall, and that's why I'm also not blaming Smith that much. The defensive shifts in front of him, he was bailing them out in a lot of situations. If I'm the Oilers, I'm looking at this as a bad game that you ended up losing. It only ended 8-6 after they were down 7-4, and there was an empty netter.
Only ended 8-6, Clinton Yates? Please expand on that a little bit.
My point is that the Oilers got back into this skate in a major way and just kind of ran out of time. That was the overall issue in terms of what they were doing. So neither team is going to be happy about their performance here, in my opinion.
Well, Colorado's up 1-0. Justin Tinsley, what's the takeaway from last night?
I know some people may call this game ugly, but you know who enjoyed it? This guy. I yawned twice and missed 2 goals. Like, I knew, we spoke about this yesterday. The series was going to be an offensive explosion. The over-under yesterday was at 7. That's the highest in 5 years, and they blew past that in the first 24 minutes. So, look, if you're looking at both teams, they have a lot to improve on moving forward, but if I'm Colorado, here's why I'm concerned, and you mentioned this, Tony. Darcy Kempner, he's hurt. We don't know how long he's hurt. He's 6-2-0 in the postseason, 904 save percentage, and now Colorado's already a wickedly they're a wickedly great offensive team, but now without their goaltender, how much more pressure is already on a prolific offense to be even more so?
Yeah, I didn't know we were getting points for being born now. I was born in Manhattan, New York, so I would like my 5 points. And don't worry, Courtney, your second game will be way better than your first, just like the Edmonton goalie.
Listen, the Gutierrez is going
I see this as being
I'm here for this.
Is he?
What I see is the fireworks in this series continuing because of you got the goalie situation, one giving up 6 goals, one getting hurt, and you don't know the seriousness of it. And so, yeah, you've got this Edmonton team that can score 6 to 8 goals anytime, much less against a backup goalie. So, yes, I do think, White, I'd be a little concerned if you're a 40-year-old goalie and you've done this twice now to start a series because Colorado is still going to pressure you. So, yeah, I think Edmonton is probably in a pretty good place right now, but, this is going to be a high-scoring series regardless if both goalies are healthy. So I think that's going to continue.
After the horn, Courtney Cronin back in.
Since Izzy was talking about me being born and getting points for that, I wasn't born in the 1980s, but this feels like what I imagined hockey to have been like in the 1980s. It's fun again. We have goals galore, and it is a big watchable product for
incredible job there. Although I do have to correct you, Courtney. Israel was not even born in the 1980s. Isn't that right, Israel? Oh, man.
1977.
Okay, it was a great year. We're going to move on now.
Luka Doncic.
Draymond Green, I believe, has something to say, and he says it on a podcast, which should surprise none of us. But here we go. Let's go, Draymond.
Kevin Durant was absolutely insane. Steph Curry got double teamed probably 7 times the amount that KD did in a given series.
So he's remembering the finals, of course, because he played in them. He told this to Colin Cowherd, I should say. And he's talking up Steph Curry. There's been a conversation going on about whether Steph Curry needs an MVP in these finals, or it's maybe deserved one in the past, and he needs it for his legacy. Kevin Durant, of course, has a bat signal whenever anyone mentions his name anywhere. He tweeted what Draymond was saying was 100% false about the 7 times as many defensive double teams. But Courtney, right back at you again, because I heard you on radio this week. You were talking up Curry and his finals appearances and what he's done and maybe where he's come up a little bit short. This whole Curry needs to show out and get an MVP award in the finals, and Draymond versus Durant. What's reality here?
Well, what's reality is what Draymond told KD in their Twitter back and forth, that you need to listen to full takes, not just snippets that you hear from interviews. So Draymond Green's defending his teammate here in Stephen Curry and basically telling Kevin Durant, without directly telling him there in the interview, that the reason he got 2 finals MVPs is because Curry took on a lot of double teams that allowed Kevin Durant to shoot the lights out of the arena. So I look at it from that perspective, but as it pertains to Stephen Curry in this finals MVP conversation, let us, the media, have this conversation. Players, especially those who are going to be playing in this NBA Finals, they don't need to be worrying about it because it's going to be open season on Stephen Curry coming up here soon. Boston is going to throw everything that they have to try to limit him in these moments. And as we've seen previously, great players draw a lot of attention. This is not something that Stephen Curry is new to, which is why, for me, he doesn't need a finals MVP to solidify his legacy as a top 10 player in the NBA. It would be a nice luxury, but he doesn't need it.
Israel Gutierrez.
Well, it's confusing why we're talking about finals from 4 years ago when there's one coming up. So in that sense, I don't really love the conversation at all that Draymond is bringing up. But here's something that I don't think has been talked about. You don't necessarily always double team the other team's best player. You double team the player that you think can get them out of system or can maybe turn the ball over. Tyler Hero got double teamed way more than Jimmy Butler this postseason. He is not a better player than Jimmy Butler. Jimmy even joked about it, during the postseason, during this second round. So it's just one of those things where they look like maybe they could get Steph to turn the ball over. It's more difficult to double team Kevin Durant because he's this 7-foot giant who can shoot over a double team as well. So I don't think that's indicative of anything. And that's why I don't like the conversation. That was a special team, probably should have stayed together. This team is a totally different team. Steph Curry's still the center of it. And if they double him, it'll look entirely different because they don't have a Kevin Durant as an outlet on this team.
Justin Tinsley.
Oh, poor Stephen Curry. Ye all-time great, who's averaging 27, 6, and 6 and shooting almost 40% in 28 finals games. Look, this is KD and Draymond's relationship. Like the thing about this Warriors era, for as iconic and for as great as it is, it started with drama. There was drama during it, and now you can see there's these little spats like after it. we can go into the X's and O's of what Draymond is saying. I don't even think it was a diss, but with this team, more than any other great team from any other era, it feels like they're always trying to justify their greatness. And as much as I love Draymond, I don't need him to focus on this. I need him to focus on why ESPN's Basketball Power Index only gives the Warriors a 14% chance to win the series. The Golden State Warriors, 14%.
You say that. You work for ESPN. That's on you, Tinsley. I'm putting that on you. Clinton Yates.
I'm with Izzy on this one. At the day before the finals begin, we're sitting here talking about an old teammate and a previous team for a guy who's also now on a new team with another superstar. This is just weird to me. I get that this is how Draymond motivates himself in terms of talking, but if I'm a Warriors fan, how about we discuss the Celtics, the task at hand, Draymond? That seems to be a little bit more important as far as I'm concerned in terms of what they're doing. What happened back in the day with your old homies has nothing to do with what you're trying to do right now.
Israel, do you put any stock into the Steph Curry hasn't won an NBA Finals MVP and he needs it to elevate himself?
No, because he should have won it over Andre Iguodala. And just look at the numbers. Andy Bailey on Twitter just did a comparison between him and Shaq during their same ages and finals runs, and it was very similar. He's a great player. He doesn't need that.
If I remember correctly, though, during that vote for MVP, Iguodala and LeBron got all the votes. So Steph didn't even get one vote during that. All right. Taking a break right here. Courtney Cronin, the rookie. Wow, 23 to start. And there may be a budding rivalry. Cronin versus Gutierrez versus Cronin. He threw the gauntlet down. We'll see what happens at Buy or Sell next. Naquinity. No quantity.
Oh, man.
Clinton Yates, around the horn to you. Who's the favorite and what are you buying in this series?
I'm buying the goaltending. We've seen how that's gone awry in the Western Conference, and even though the Rangers have played so well against the Bolts so far this year, the major factor is Shesterkin. He stopped 91 of 94 shots against the Lightning in the regular season. I'll give that an advantage.
Does that make New York favorite, Clinton Yates, in your mind?
I believe so. Yes.
Courtney Cronin, what are you buying?
I'm buying this goalie matchup just like Clinton. It's the best of right now in Shesterkin and versus the best of arguably this era in Andrei Vasilevsky. And just to show you how good Igor Shesterkin, I'm going to get that right at some point, has been throughout this season. In the regular season, he had 44.85 goals saved above average. You want to know who the next closest was? No other goalie even reached 30. So he has been lights out in 2021-22. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what this goal...
Yes, we're all looking forward to it. We're looking forward to having some time for the rest of the show. Israel Gutierrez, what are you buying?
I'm with John Cooper, who said, look, of Igor, he pointed at his own guy, Vasilevsky, holding the cup and said, until he does that, my guy's better. And I totally agree with him. Vasilevsky has been an absolute stud in the postseason, better than he is in the regular season. And, with all this time off, 9 days off after sweeping the President's Cup winners, you got to think that they're the favorites in this one. They clearly have the advantage of experience here. So,
yes, and Justin Tinsley.
Yeah, the hardest thing in sports to do is three-peat, but I'm still picking Tampa Bay in this. Emily Kaplan said this about Tampa Bay. They're still haunted by being the best team in 2019 and getting swept. So they're battling ghosts and they're battling the team in front of them. I get they lost all the games to the Rangers this year, but until Vasilevsky doesn't have that all-time postseason glow on him, I'm still picking Tampa Bay because they're on the doorstep of history.
Appreciate you citing your sources while giving your answer.
I was going to say, where'd Emily
You talked to Emily Kaplan. I'll give Emily Kaplan the points there.
She wrote it.
I know she did. Again, I appreciate you, but she gets the points then. We'll move on. Buy or Sell 2, the new golf tour's first event. Field includes more than a dozen PGA Tour players, and Dustin Johnson's name atop the list. Johnson publicly came out, supported PGA Tour 3 months ago. His agent now saying Johnson contemplated it for years, decided it's his and his family's best interest to pursue. The Telegraph UK reporting Greg Norman lured Johnson with a $125 million offer and maybe more if he commits to the series. There's that, and then there's the greater discussion over this tour. Greg Norman runs Saudi Arabia funded. This was Phil Mickelson's plan too, but now he's nowhere to be found. The growing conversation about sport washing, whether these players are pawns and laundering the Saudi image against the massive human rights violations in the country. Courtney, how do you consider it all?
I consider it a money grab here for someone like Dustin Johnson. I mean, you can be lured for a lot less than $125 million, even though he did just lose his sponsorship because he committed to this tournament with Royal Bank of Canada. He's 37 years old, so if he really wants to say goodbye to the PGA and potentially being able to compete in those events again, that's a very expensive decision he's going to have to make.
Israel Gutierrez.
I mean, it's a tough decision, right? Because the PGA is saying to them, hey, it's either their tour or our tour. It can't be both. And you want to think that the PGA Tour is doing this for moral purposes, but they're probably just doing it to keep their best players in hand and make as much money as they can. But to these individuals, you have to wonder, hey, what is your purpose here? What is your goal here? Do you even consider where this money is coming from? A lot of people would call it blood money. Is that something you want on your hands for the end of your career? And that's a question these individuals are going to have to answer for themselves. Somebody like Dustin Johnson, who you would never have said, hey, this guy's struggling, this guy needs some more money. And so he's making this choice. He's at the tail end of his career probably, and just making the money grab. It's just up to him whether it's something that he can live with for the rest of his life.
Justin Tinsley, how do you consider it all?
You know, it's not as if the PGA is a model institution that hasn't had its own fair share of controversies and hypocrisies, but if it's one thing that we know about the world, and we're having these conversations right now, if you dangle money in front of people, especially $250 million in prize money, they will come. It really doesn't matter who's offering the money. So now that leads to far more complex conversations, but the last thing I'm going to do is be surprised if somebody took a short-term bag and not look at the long-term impact of it.
Yeah, there was a time when all four of the panelists here wouldn't have been allowed to play at Augusta National, so I'm not over here standing defending the PGA in terms of their practices, but at the same time, this is not the NCAA with students who have hardships trying to get paid for sacrificing their body. This is not the WNBA where women have to go overseas in order to make up for the money they can't play here. These are dudes playing golf. What do you need to be going overseas for, especially if this is what you're dealing with in terms of the money and where it comes from? I don't understand.
Well, let me ask a follow-up then, Clinton,
clamor
on
for these guys to be
sport washing, the term now used. Money grabs, business interests intersecting in countries with woeful practices. Here, golf in Saudi Arabia, Qatar in the upcoming World Cup. We've talked about the NBA practices of business in China. And this upcoming year, Dubai. Do you see this tour going forward as a sign this is now reality, or could it illuminate what it is, Clinton?
I don't. What are you going to do? Walk into your local club and say, I'm a huge fan of the new tour? I mean, that doesn't seem to add up to me. I realize there's a lot of things that go wrong in a lot of places, and the hypocrisy often adds upon itself. But adding to it, just because you can, that's called greed.
Israel.
I think that everybody knows that.
It depends on what people want to know. You know, it depends on whether they're just going to watch golf and ignore everything else, because you know that the players themselves aren't going to bring up some of these atrocities. They're going to try to hide it as much as possible. So it depends on who is doing the talking and who's doing the listening, frankly, because if you're going to watch the event, you're probably not going to have a second TV with a bunch of commentators criticizing it.
There's a lot of conflicted interest here, too. I mean, also, there are no answers to this particular question. Is there a difference between doing business in a country, like some of the examples I just gave, and doing the business of the country? Is this tour doing the dirty business of laundering the image of Saudi Arabia? Conversation, thanks for that one today. Alcantara at the Mets game last night, reaching over in the home run for the barehander with Levi in his other arm. What struck you about this catch most, Courtney?
The core strength of the dad, I guess, but oh my gosh, look at how he's holding the kid. He's lucky he didn't drop him. If I'm the mom, I'm not going to have the kindest words for them when they come home after the game.
Israel?
Well, that's what struck me. As you look at Mom, she seemed pretty happy about the catch. They're going to probably go home together, and Dad's going to unironically drink out of a world's best dad mug. That was a terrible choice.
The point for that answer, Israel. But the core strength of the dad, Courtney, you're right on that. It's almost like he should sit on some railroad tracks and take some photos. Israel Gutierrez can tell you about that after the show. We'll move on. Fantasy football kerfuffle day 6. We know that Jock Peterson moved on and Tommy Pham has come back from a suspension, but he did say in this league, Mike Trout is a terrible fantasy football commissioner. So now that we have that out of the way, Israel, what is the headline of this whole ordeal?
The headline is every player should have a fantasy football league and have this type of drama. Baseball needs a little bit of more drama, and this is going to do it for
Courtney,
us. So,
how
yeah,
much blame does Trout deserve as commissioner?
He doesn't deserve this sort of blame. Tommy Pham is just deflecting now from slapping Jock Peterson to yelling at Mike Trout, who he said we knew was not a good commissioner to begin with. So
it's a thankless job to be commissioner. Show some respect to your commissioner of your fantasy league. The rookie, Courtney Cronin, congratulations, first career win.
I've got a lot of families here at ESPN, from ESPN Radio to my new wonderful family at Around the Horn, and my family at ESPN's NFL Nation. We lost 2 colleagues in the matter of a year, Vaughn McClure and Jeff Dickerson, and we have our foundation event taking place in Chicago on June 28th at Tau Chicago. You can go to tvmjdfoundation.org to buy tickets. Sarah Spain, who's usually in this seat, is the one emceeing.